Aloha, and how's it? Today, we're talking all about how to measure your LinkedIn sales and marketing performance. So, more on that in a minute. How was your weekend? We have all types of surfing and waves available right now on the North Shore of Oahu, which is making the weekend a paddle fest and allowing us to spend extra time with the family at the beach. So, the board you see behind me today is actually the one that I absolutely love and rave about. And you'll see it's even got some wax on it. That's what that is. If you're not familiar with surfing, that means I actually ride this board. So if you see a board that doesn't have wax on it, now you know that it's just for decoration and the person is not actually riding it. All right. So have you checked out the latest episode of the Mango Effect podcast yet? This week's episode is called Do the Holidays Your Way, where I talk about what it means to celebrate the holidays your way, like however you want to do it. So we can be very creative in how this looks. Also, how to craft your own version of family rituals if that's your thing, and how to make the most of this time of year. I think a lot of us have mixed emotions around what to feel during the holidays. Some of us love it, others of us not so much. So we talk about all of it on the podcast. While you're there, check out the other 40 plus episodes about creating a life you love, being a digital entrepreneur, figuring out how to live in rhythm with nature, learning to surf, growing an online business, and more. But now it is time for Mondays with Mindy. It's a weekly show on Monday afternoons if you are based in the US, where I talk about all things LinkedIn pipeline, promo, and profiles, what I call the three P's of LinkedIn. So, do you have questions about LinkedIn that you want me to answer? Be sure to like this post, whether you're live or watching from the replay. Leave your questions below and I will answer them after the show or on a future episode of Mondays with Mindy. This is a question that we're talking about today that I did get asked, and is something that a lot of people want to know, like, well, what numbers should I be watching? Why does it matter? How do I know if my program is working? So remember, if you have a question you want it answered, just let me know that you want a Mondays with Mindy episode on it, and I will add it to the queue. So let's get to today's topic. How do you measure ROI, return on investment, on LinkedIn? So last week we talked about how to sell like a marketer. If you didn't see it yet, go catch that episode, which leads us to this week's topic where we get a bit more nerdy and start digging into the numbers to figure out what's working and why. So you cannot actually improve what you are not measuring. Many of us have heard this and we understand it. Like up here, we know, like, okay, we have to actually measure, we have to actually know what's going on. But who has the actual time to measure all of their LinkedIn activity? I don't know about you, but many of my clients don't naturally enjoy looking at numbers until they understand what those numbers mean. When it comes to LinkedIn, should you simply just kind of wing it? Well, you could. I've seen people do it. I've done it myself. I'm guilty. But if you're being strategic about how and why you're using LinkedIn, you might want to check your numbers every so often. Because if you don't, what could happen? Well, you may go all in on LinkedIn, like I talked about last week, and have nothing to show for it, which can be very, very frustrating. You could also see something is working, but maybe you don't know what is working or how to replicate that success. Maybe you have no idea what good sales and marketing metric benchmarks even are on LinkedIn. You might not even know you could track your personal LinkedIn profile performance. I talk to a lot of people who say, "Oh, there's actually metrics that I can look at for my personal profile." Yes, there are. So today we're going to figure out how to get your LinkedIn metrics dialed in. We'll also talk about which numbers matter, which measurement tools to use, and when to adjust your approach on LinkedIn. So we're covering the gamut today. So if numbers are your thing or not, that's okay, because we're going to make it easy for the non-numbers people here, which would be me too. You can stop rolling the dice when it comes to LinkedIn. And the best part is it only takes a few minutes per week to actually check your metrics and see what's working. And aloha, for those who don't know me, my name is Mindy Rosser. I'm the founder of Mindy Rosser Marketing, and I have a program called the LinkedIn Accelerator for those who want to go from 0 to 60 on LinkedIn with their profile and their network. We are actually kicking off the next cohort in January, so stay tuned. That is just around the corner. Before you know it, the holidays will be here and gone, and we'll be in January, and you are going to want to get your New Year's resolutions, which should include LinkedIn. Of course, I'm going to talk about LinkedIn. One of your New Year's resolutions. All right. So I help superstars who feel they are the best kept secret in their industry to become that go to visible expert in their niche so they can get that next opportunity, grow their business, and scale their impact. In this live, we are going to talk about Why not paying attention to the right sales and marketing metrics on LinkedIn is causing you to waste your time and money, where you feel like you're throwing spaghetti at the LinkedIn wall, and how you can figure out exactly what is working or not working for you on LinkedIn in just 3 to 5 minutes per week. Did I say per week? Yes, I said per week because it doesn't take that long. So go ahead and like this post, whether you're live or watching from the replay, to give it some social love. So, which LinkedIn strategies actually work? This is a very big question, and it's easy to get lost in the minutia of either the numbers or think, oh, well, I'm doing a lot of things on LinkedIn. I think I'm getting business. I think it's working. So, a lot of people jump into LinkedIn head first and they start Googling all sorts of tips and tricks from LinkedIn gurus. So, with all that enthusiasm, they throw together a mismatch. Like, how is that? Mishmatch? Mixed match of tactics that promise to generate thousands of inbound leads, or turn your LinkedIn profile into a prospecting machine, having 30 sales calls per month. Okay, how many of you actually want to have 30 sales calls per month? I know nobody can see me, or I can't see you, but I don't think all of you are raising your hands. I have worked with a number of people. Unless you are a business development person or a salesperson, most of you probably don't want to have 30 sales calls per month. Anyhow, with all of that LinkedIn activity, it's easy to get caught up in the vanity metrics and not really know what's working for you on LinkedIn. So you generate all of this noise on LinkedIn, but does that turn into tangible business for you? Think about that for a moment. You're doing all this stuff on LinkedIn, or you're thinking about doing all this stuff on LinkedIn, but are all of those activities together going to work to generate you more money in the bank? Is it helping you to scale your impact? Are you growing your LinkedIn network strategically with the right people, not just making noise? Or are you just spinning your wheels on LinkedIn and kind of hoping for the best? And that's actually what most people do. Most people do their social media check-ins, and this isn't just strictly applying to LinkedIn. Like, a lot of people on social media just kind of check all their channels and do what they're supposed to do and call it a day and never really look at their numbers. When it comes to LinkedIn, we don't do that. You are not like most people. You are not going to approach LinkedIn treating it just like another social media channel where you have to post. We've all heard the phrase, you cannot improve what you are not measuring, and this applies to LinkedIn too. So, the most important thing is for you to actually learn your LinkedIn numbers. I'm going to show you 7 of my favorites in a few moments, but the key is that savvy LinkedIn users, the ones that we all admire, the ones who talk about how much business they get on LinkedIn, or don't talk about how much business they get on LinkedIn, even better, they don't spend a ton of time looking at their numbers. Why? Why is that? You think, well, Mindy, you're telling me that I got to look at my numbers, but you're telling me people don't spend a lot of time? Correct. Because they only pay attention to the numbers that matter most, the metrics that actually move the needle for their business. They know exactly what these numbers are. They understand which levers to pull to change those numbers up or down. They also, a lot of times, use a nifty tool to break down all of that data in layman's terms. So there's really not a secret to the numbers or how to track them. The numbers are readily available to everyone. It's more a process of building it into a workflow once you understand which metrics you should be tracking. So this is really simple. In theory, we get it. Just like we have a bank account and we manage our business finances, we manage our personal finances. All of that requires looking at our numbers. We kind of know what's coming in every month, we know what's going out every month. If we want to make it better, then a lot of times we'll create a budget. It's the same with LinkedIn. You got numbers, you got marketing metrics, you got sales metrics. All of the time that you are on LinkedIn, you are racking up numbers or not racking up numbers, but you are getting some type of numbers coming in no matter how active or inactive you are on LinkedIn. So there is some type of number to work with in all of these things that I'm going to show you today. Sometimes that number may be zero, sometimes that number may be higher. So we're going to look at the metrics and figure out what metrics to pay attention to, why they matter, and I'm going to show you a really, really cool tool that I use as well. So if you are wondering, okay, Mindy, I get it. Numbers are important. I should be tracking them. I'm not tracking them. I'm kind of tracking them, but just eyeballing them. I really want you to feel confident that you know what numbers to pay attention to on LinkedIn and why they work. So we are going to get a little bit nerdy, not too nerdy though, because my numbers are pretty to look at. And I'm going to actually pull up my analytics tool. So some of you may have heard of this tool before. Most of you probably have not. It is called Shield. It is an analytics app. Yes, I do recommend people use it. Yes, it does cost money. I will share the link at the end if you think it looks cool and you want to try it. I am not trying to do a hard sell. This is not a sales pitch for the app. I just want you to understand that you can get a good number of numbers on LinkedIn and pull them into something like Shield app. I haven't come across anything else that's a competitor to it. Maybe some of you have. If you have, put a note in the comments. Let me know. Using Shield, just so you know, for those of you who are concerned about hooking up a tool to your LinkedIn profile, I'm glad you're concerned because a lot of people hook up tools to their profile and don't realize that some of them break the LinkedIn rules. Shield does not break the LinkedIn rules. Shield is very, very good about being compliant and making sure that they are in agreement with the LinkedIn user agreement. So do not be afraid of using Shield. If you are one of those who likes to do your due diligence, but realize it is not breaking any rules. It is not spammy. It does not cause any issues in using LinkedIn. Okay, so the first metric I'm going to talk about LinkedIn profile views. So first of all, what are views? And let me actually share my screen here so you can see what we are talking about. All right, I think that's good. All right, so when we are talking about views, you're going to see views on this link here at the very top corner. You see views, it says 8,149. So what is a marketing view? So your views are the total number of views that your LinkedIn profile has received in a specific time period. This means people have not only seen something of yours in their LinkedIn newsfeed, they've actually looked at your profile. That is awesome. That is huge. And now you understand why I say your profile is the most important thing on LinkedIn, because it is. And profile views are king. Too many people assume this is a vanity metric. Like, why does it matter how many profile views I'm getting? It is not a vanity metric. It is really important because here is what it is telling you. If this number is consistent or it's going up, it's telling you that your keywords, your posts, your profile are getting attention, piquing interest, and getting people to learn more. You're getting people curious. You're getting them curious enough to look at your profile. If this number is going down over time, you either may have just switched something on your LinkedIn profile, or maybe you're simply not getting the right people to pay attention. So either way, you need to pay attention whether that number is kind of hovering around the same, it's going up, it's going down. So you can actually try looking at your LinkedIn profile headline. I have a video about this too, if you want to look it up in the archives. And you can see my video on how to fix your LinkedIn headline. Just type in LinkedIn headline, Mindi Rosser in a Google search, you'll find it. You can also dive deeper. With a paid LinkedIn account, you can actually see who is viewing your profile. So watching this number is important. If you have a paid LinkedIn account, you can actually see the people, the actual people that are looking at your profile. And you can tell whether or not, okay, these look like a good number of them are actually the right people, a good number of them are not. This will help you understand what to fix on your profile and what to pay attention to with your content. So views, very, very important. All right, so let's look at the next number, and you can also see it right below that. We're going to talk about number 2, engagement rate. So engagement rate, if you do not know what this is, your engagement rate is calculated as the views to like, comment, share ratio for a specific time period. Okay, so in other words, how many people, like, so if you're thinking about the size of your network, say you have 1,000 people in your network and 1% of those people are actually liking, engaging, viewing, paying attention to, commenting on your content, sharing your content. Okay, that's not too bad. But the number that I'm looking for with the engagement rate, and this one is artificially elevated that you can see there, it is actually not 130%. The 2.78% is a little bit more accurate to the side there. I usually am shooting for 2 to 3% engagement rate. That is usually quite good for most of the clients that I work with. So if I'm seeing anything in that range, I'm pretty happy with it. If you can get that higher, great. If you have a smaller network, guess what? That number is probably going to be a lot higher than your friends that have a very large network. So LinkedIn will not give you this number easily on your LinkedIn profile. You will actually have to manually calculate it unless you're using a tool like Shield, like what you see on my screen. So keep that in mind. This tells you how people are engaging with your posts on LinkedIn. So this number is not going to be relevant to those of you who are not posting. You have to actually be posting on LinkedIn for this number to be relevant. It's one of the most important marketing metrics to pay attention to from a marketing perspective. A lot of times people will look at The other stuff like the comments, like you can see the comments on here, you can see the shares, you can see the likes, and a lot of times people gravitate to those metrics. But what actually is good and best, I think, is the engagement rate. Like how many people, because if you have a small network, you may not get a high number of likes, but guess what? If your engagement rate is pretty good, for the size of your network, then you're doing fine and you shouldn't be stressed out about that. So, again, remember a good industry benchmark to shoot for is between 1% to 3% here. If you have a very large network, try to shoot for 1% because you may have people in there that are not so engaged. And when I'm talking about large, I'm talking about if you have 10,000, 10,000, 15,000 connections, followers, 1% is pretty good. If you have a smaller network, try to get closer to that 2 to 3%. So, excuse me, throat. Mine is definitely outside that range because I have a smaller, more strategic network who's pretty engaged with my content. So I think as of the recording of this, I have like 7,000 something, and most of them are pretty engaged. So I usually hover right around that 2.78% engagement rate. So what this number is telling you, whether or not your content is valuable to your LinkedIn audience and connections. So if this number hovers around the same range from month to month, that's good. That's good. That means like you're continuing to engage the people in your network. So basically, in their mind, is your content worth sharing, liking, or commenting on? If so, your engagement rate is going to be solid. Okay, so the next one we want to pay attention to, which you can also see on the screen, is the number of followers. So this is a marketing metric. What it is how many people are either following you or connected to you. So most of your connections are going to be following you. There are going to be some that may unfollow you, but that's pretty rare. So basically, in terms of number of followers, you're thinking this is pretty much a total of your followers and your connections combined. So obviously, you want to see this number go up over time, unless you are doing some LinkedIn connections cleanup, where you will see this number go down initially. So if you are looking at your network and you're kind of streamlining people and you're like, I have a lot of people in there that don't belong on my network and you're kicking them out, then you're going to see this number go down. Otherwise, this number is going to go up. So you can see it here on the screen. Let me see if followers. Yep, you can see it there on the screen, the 21,799. So you can see you want that number to continue to go up over time, and you want to definitely be proactive about getting connected with people every single month, every single week. So what it is telling you, how many people are in your LinkedIn audience? So in terms of when you post a piece of content, how many potential eyeballs will see that piece of content? That's basically what it is. So most of these, excuse me, take a drink real quick. Most of these will likely be LinkedIn connections unless you get into the influencer range with your network size. One more drink. Excuse me, I've been coming down with something. Okay. So keep growing your LinkedIn network with the right people, and you cannot go wrong here. So this is a really, really good metric. Okay. Let's move on to metric number 4. This is the number of new connections. So this is a little bit different than what you're seeing here in the number of followers. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. And we'll go back to the others because the rest of them you're not going to be able to see in Shield. So when it comes to the number of connections you have, this is important because with a connection, you can actually have a two-way conversation. So what it is how many people did you connect with on LinkedIn within a certain time frame, which does include both inbound, so received connections, and outbound, ones that were sent by you, connection invitations. So this should always, of course, be trending upward, and it's critical to ABC. Always, always, always be connecting. So for those of you who are into list building or growing an audience, this is how it's done on LinkedIn. Connections is kind of the equivalent of email list building when you're on LinkedIn. So what it's telling you, how many people who are receiving your connections and accepting your connections. So you really want to pay attention to that number. Obviously, that one should go up and up and up over time. If you're taking a strategic approach, I like to say if you're adding about 10 to 20 people to your network per week, that is really good. If you can even add 5 people per week, so in other words, every single weekday, you're adding one person to your LinkedIn network. That is solid. So it just depends on how many people you actually need to be connected to. Some people like smaller networks, some people like larger networks. Figure out what size you want and then send as many connection invitations as you need each week to get you to that point. All right, so now we're looking at connection acceptance rate. This is also what I would consider a sales metric. What it is, it's calculated as the connections sent to the connections accepted. So it's a ratio for that specific time period. I like to measure a connection acceptance rate for month to month. I feel like if you try to do it week over week, that can get a little awkward because sometimes people take a few weeks, sometimes a couple of months to actually accept your connection invitation. So, what you do again, it's the connections sent to the connections accepted ratio. So, in other words, if you send 100 connections over the span of a month, and 60 of them are accepted, that gives you a 60% connection acceptance rate. For most people who are actively prospecting, so that means you are using LinkedIn to generate leads, you're using LinkedIn to build new client relationships, you're using LinkedIn from the perspective of, I want to generate new business, this rate can vary dramatically. So if you're consistently getting below 25%, your connection acceptance rate is below 25% in an industry that is pretty active on LinkedIn, you need to rethink your connection invitation. So just keep that in mind. Like 25%, if you're hovering around there, if you're close to 25, that's okay. But if you are getting like 10% of people accepting your connection invitation, you definitely need to improve the message that you're sending. You need to improve your targeting. You need to really do your homework on your target audience to make sure they're accepting. I like to shoot for 25%. So I probably like personally I like to see around a 30 to 40% connection acceptance rate for my clients who are actively prospecting. But sometimes some industries it just doesn't get that high and I'm okay with that too. So again, 25, 30, 40% really solid numbers. If you're getting higher than that, you're doing excellent. So just pat yourself on the back, don't change your messaging and your approach. You're doing fantastic. So those who are simply getting connected, like if you're just using LinkedIn to get connected, build a network, and you're not all of them are prospects, you're just trying to get connected with people in the space, colleagues, peers, then around 50 to 75% for a connection acceptance rate is pretty good. So those are some numbers. I know I threw a lot at you, but just write those down. You can come back to the replay too if you would like to make a note of those numbers and just start measuring them. I challenge you to just measure for 1 month. Like send out. I would do an easy number. I'd send out like 100. See how many connection invitations are accepted in that month, and boom, there's your connection acceptance rate. So what it is telling you, this is how good your connection request is. So when I'm talking about your connection request, every single time you send a LinkedIn connection invitation, you can actually put text in there. So you have 300 characters, including spaces, that you can actually write a good message to somebody to get them to accept your connection request. If that message is good, this number is going to be high. If your targeting is good too, so you have to actually know your people. Don't expect, here's on a side note here, don't expect LinkedIn to feed you all the right people. Like if you are using LinkedIn Sales Navigator or something like that to create a list in LinkedIn, you still need to look at those people's profiles to make sure they're a fit. Half the time, the people that end up on a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search, no matter how good your search criteria is, half of them are usually not going to be a fit. So you still need to look at people's profiles before you send connection invitations. So if you're doing that appropriately and you write a good message, you should get a good number here. And if you are not, get some help first of all. Like ask somebody who is doing this well. Like if you have a colleague or a peer or a business bestie that you can say, hey, can I run my LinkedIn connection invitation by you? Does this sound too salesy or pitchy or spammy? How can I improve this? Get some input. Like talk to people and figure out how you can improve your message. And then just make sure your targeting is on point. Because if your message is not getting people to accept, it's either poorly written or you're reaching out to the wrong people. Those are the two biggest problems that I see. All right, moving on to number 6, the connection to conversion rate. So, for those of you who are not in sales, you say, whoa, Mindy, what does that actually mean? So, what this is, it's calculated as the number of connections who agree to have a conversation. So, basically, you go in there, you send them a connection invitation, they accept, you go into a back and forth dialogue, and then they say, ooh, I would love to have a conversation with you. Or you send them a Calendly link, boom, they're on your calendar. So, that number of people who agree to have a conversation or convert. I would say convert to whatever your ask is. So you may not be trying to get them on a call. You may want them to download something. You may want them to visit a sales page. You may want them to attend a webinar. Whatever that conversion action is, That's what you're measuring here. And then this can vary depending on what your LinkedIn connection strategy is. So for example, most of my clients that I work with are looking to have a conversation with their new connections. That's it. I mean, that's like the holy grail is let's have a conversation. I want that person ending up on my calendar. And hopefully that will lead to new business opportunities. It's up to the client to close them. So others are simply asking a question or trying to get the new connection engaged. So some people just really want to get into a back and forth, a two-way conversation that is more along the lines of getting to know you. Okay. So everybody's different with their objective here. A good connection to conversion rate is around 40%. So write that down. Connection to conversion rate 40%. This means that 40% of the new connections that you are making are agreeing to a conversation or they are taking action on whatever your conversion event is. Okay. So they're signing up, they're getting on your list, they are downloading a resource, they are talking with you, whatever that may be. They're giving you their email address. What it's telling you, if this number is good, it's how well aligned your messaging is with your target audience and their wants, needs, and desires. So basically, is your message working for your people? If it is, beautiful. If you're hitting 40%, if 40% of your new connections are excited and want to do business with you in some way or get to know you better, you are doing a fantastic job on LinkedIn. Don't change anything. All right. If what your ask is seems like a no-brainer to them or it's obviously advantageous, they are going to be much more likely to convert. Keep that in mind. Again, this all comes down to targeting. Are you finding the right people on LinkedIn and are you sending them the right messaging? When you crack that, you are golden on LinkedIn and all of these numbers look beautiful. Okay. So this is a really, really important number. And I know it's a lot to take in. You might be processing, but again, come back to this and you will definitely understand what it means and make sure to make a note of all of the percentages just so you can reference that later. Okay. And our final number is the number of opportunities. So this is a sales metric, of course. What it is how many sales opportunities did you identify that came from LinkedIn from your either new connections or old connections that resurfaced during a given time period. So basically, how many people want to do business with you and signed on the dotted line to give you money or are interested in giving you money, I should say, that came from LinkedIn. It's that simple. Okay. So if you are not seeing opportunities on a regular basis, at least monthly in LinkedIn, something is off. So you need to figure out exactly what is off. And I'm happy to help if you ever need to troubleshoot or talk it through. But when you have a healthy LinkedIn program and a strategic network, you can expect both inbound opportunities and outbound opportunities to kind of come up every single month. So that's what a healthy LinkedIn network should be giving you and should be generating for your business. So what it's telling you, whether or not you're using LinkedIn effectively for business, if you are getting zero opportunities from LinkedIn, something is off and you've got to fix it. Unless you don't care about LinkedIn and you don't want to spend time here, then why would you be watching this far, right? So if you want more opportunities, you have to be doing the right combination of things on LinkedIn. Sometimes it can be very tricky to figure out which levers to pull here to get more opportunities. But getting some advice, I think, from an experienced LinkedIn sales and marketing expert, doesn't have to be me, or a savvy friend can help. Somebody who understands you or takes the time to get to know you, your business, and your market. All right. So there you have it. Those are my top 7 metrics to pay attention to on LinkedIn to know if your sales and marketing program is working. I know we got a little nerdy today. We got in the weeds just a little bit, but how are you doing? Are there areas that you see for improvement? When's the next time you're actually going to look at your metrics? Is there one number you want to start paying attention to? If you are struggling to figure out what to do next, that's okay. Post a question below, shoot me a direct message to discuss. And again, if you want to go deeper with your marketing analytics, that tool that I recommended is Shield App. So literally shieldapp.ai. That will help you get the LinkedIn metrics I showed you today. If you like that pretty little graph, I didn't even show you all that was in there, but it's amazing. Like I love logging into that tool, being able to see how I'm doing, how my clients are doing, and just get a really good snapshot of what's working and not in their programs. So I'll put a link in the comments if you want to check it out. Plus, I also have my own nerdy spreadsheets. So for those of you who like nerdy spreadsheets, this is it. This is mindyrosser.com/metrics. And this is actually the exact metric tracker that I use for my clients. So it is really, really good if you like spreadsheets. So if you're not scared of a spreadsheet and you want to manually enter all your data from LinkedIn into the spreadsheet, it'll calculate things for you and you can play with it. So make a copy and use it for yourself and just give it a whirl. Because I challenge you just to track one metric. Doesn't have to be all of them. You're going to see a lot in that spreadsheet. Track one from month to month to month. And it could just be the number of new connections that you get month over month and just watch how that's growing. Then, when you feel a little bit more confident and you want to measure your connection acceptance rate, start paying attention to that. Look at your profile views. There are so many different numbers you can track and look at on LinkedIn, but I challenge you just to pick one to start. All right, so I will see you all next week on Mondays with Mindy. We are actually going to be talking about looking at your LinkedIn profile and then really figuring out what to do from a marketing perspective. So, building on what we talked about this week, taking it a step further, because you know what? The next year is coming up really quickly, and I want you to feel prepared and ready to rock your LinkedIn strategy. So, that's next week. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and my inbox is open if you want to message me directly. All right, I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful rest of